Welcome back, everybody, to the ThriveIN Wabash County podcast. We have all three of our co-hosts in the studio tonight, so I'm fortunate to be joined this evening with Adam Stakeman and Christine Floor, and then extremely excited to have our special guest this evening, Bill Barrows. Welcome to the ThriveIN Wabash County studio.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And as I said before we went on the air, all three of you separately asked me to be on this, and I'm thinking, why? Oh, well.
Our listeners are going to buckle in and find out here over the course of this episode exactly the answer to that question.
Okay.
But we're going to fire away. All three of us, I know, have a lot we're interested in learning about you and asking this evening. But for the listener, Bill, where are you from? A little bit about you, and then we'll dive deep into some of the things over your longtime community involvement here in Wabash County.
1975, Wabash High School graduate. Went away to Purdue, said I'd never come back, and came back. And never left again.
Sounds like one of the stories that we've said before where these youth are leaving and we need them to come back at some point.
I think he just called you youth, so feel good
I'm
about
good with that. I'm good about that.
These youth are moving back like Bill Barrows.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I have three really good friends from high school. I mean, really good friends and their wives. And one of them lives in Troy, Michigan. Actually, there's four, but one of them is my wife's sister's husband. They live in Greenfield, but we all get together at the holidays and any other time that we can. And the one that lives in Greenfield, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, are never moving back here. Mm-hmm. But my buddy that lives in Troy, Michigan, they just retired and they're considering moving back here. So you all know Mary Kramer. Mm-hmm. Mary and I have been sending them all kinds of stuff. You know, hey, there's going to be new home starts. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. So we're going to get a commission out of this sooner or later.
Sounds like we need to get them on the email blast for Visit Wabash County.
Absolutely. We'll connect after this so
There
I can
we go.
start sending them postcards myself. Invitation
They'll
letters.
go, Bill sent this.
You can have a section of the newsletter that's
Yeah.
words from Bill.
Words
Updates
from Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we get together at least 3 or 4 times a year, and right now one of the guy that lives in Troy, his mother is sick, so they've been traveling back and forth. So in fact, I had lunch with him yesterday. Just another reason, just another way to get them close.
And Bill, you're quote unquote retired, but I think we're going to spend a lot of this time talking about all of the different things you're involved in Wabash and in Wabash County. But one thing I've learned in my short time in the community is just everybody knows who you are, especially in the Wabash area. And so for our listener that may not, right, or for me beforehand, if I hadn't met you yet, why is that? What was your involvement early on? You went to high school here. You went to Purdue. When you got back, what's that story look like?
I was in the sporting goods business. In fact, when I came back from college, I got a job working for Dick's Spieth at what then was Dick's Trading Post. And I worked for Dick, and I loved it. Worked for Tom, too, but I should have never left. But I thought the grass was greener elsewhere. Went into a sporting goods scenario where I was traveling around this area, calling on schools and businesses and whatever, sports equipment, sports wear, whatever, and really just never left. And I got involved with what then was the Chamber of Commerce, and I was the chairman of the retail committee for quite a while. My wife and I later on, I don't know, none of the three of you probably know this. When Wabash Marketplace was Wabash Marketplace, Richard Ford kind of recruited me to be the head of the design committee. And Shirley Walter, my wife Nancy, and I were that committee. And things such as the bricks, we spearheaded all of that. And all of the old signage and all of that.
So the bricks, what bricks
Blame
are
it
you
on
talking
me.
about? No, but what bricks are you talking about for the listeners that don't know or for myself?
The bricks that are on the sidewalks all around downtown.
Okay,
And
got it.
what a lot of people probably don't know is there is infrastructure underneath those bricks. There's like utility lines and things like that. So if something went wrong, it was an easy fix, or at least tentatively was an easy fix. So I was involved with that, and Shirley Walter is, and Graydon was too. But let me tell you, I'm going to get off topic here slightly. When we got the Stellar Grant, of course, we're all at the Eagles. Remember that? We're all there. You probably weren't, but we're all there. And after the announcement and all that, Nancy and I are standing out front on the curb, and Shirley Walter comes flying out the door, jumps into my arms and said, "We did it. We did it. It started with us." And it made me feel so good. And it just, that, Mike and Angie were involved in this. Richard was a very special person, and he had higher expectations than I think anybody ever would have. And he also had a lot of confidence in at that time, young guys like me, and I really appreciated that.
Appreciate you sharing that. So involved with Wabash Marketplace on the design committee. That was while you had the sporting goods store?
Yes, and my sporting goods store was over here right next to the Fremont parking lot. Bill Hensley owned that building.
Yes.
Adco, Mike Shira had the travel agency.
Yes.
Mike's office and mine were right across the hall from
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, we had a good time. And then Bill Hensley's office was in there, too, and it was really nice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Really nice. And when he decided to move out of it and moved over on the south side where Blue Sky was, he rented me that office for a nominal fee. I mean, and I'm like, I was in there, and it was like, I have no business being in this. But I did it.
Yeah, sure.
And then, we just moved around and did things. And then later on, it was just more practical. When I still had my sporting goods store, I moved out into the back of Nancy J's, and that's Nancy's business.
And Nancy is, for our
my
listeners.
Wife. Yep, Nancy Jacoby Barrows is my wife. And I just loaded her up. She's headed to quilt camp tomorrow at Camp Tecumseh.
And so Nancy's business out there at the shop is selling quilts.
Actually, she doesn't sell quilts.
Okay.
She sells fabric and accessories, and she makes an occasional one. In fact, there's a small story I'll tell you on that too. But anyway, she sells all of that, and then people make quilts from the fabric and all this and that. She puts on all kinds of different seminars. She does the big shop hop down here at Honeywell's in July. Like I said, she's going to quilt camp tomorrow. She does that every other month or about every other month, and then she's got 2 or 3 other shows. When I retired, part of the negotiation was, I'll go to the shows and I'll do this and I'll do that, which I always have. But before, it was like, I got to figure out how to take my vacation, do this, do that. Now it's just real simple. But now she doesn't need me as much.
Nancy J's Fabric, though, is a destination in itself. People come from all over the region, the state, to shop there on a normal week. I mean, her quality of
on an ongoing basis.
Yes, just yeah, I agree, and the quality of merchandise, the fabrics, the notions that she carries are well sought out by quality sewers, and then the shop hop quilt. Wait. Shop hop quilt stop.
Right.
Quilt stop shop hop.
Yeah, you're close.
It's something like that.
Anyway, but
it's massive. It's like thousands of people.
That's the one at Honeywell.
Yes.
I've heard about it, and I've disassociated with quilting, but I've heard about how crazy.
One
summer,
stop shop hop.
That's it.
I knew I'd get it.
This year, I invite the 3 of you to come on Friday, whatever date it is. It's like the 3rd Friday in July, and you'll see. You come in, there'll be these ladies everywhere. And if you look up on the balcony, you'll see me standing up there with my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, because my sister comes over for this. And we just stand up there and watch all the women, and I invite you to come and join me.
Maybe we'll do a live broadcast.
There we go.
We'll do a live podcast broadcast.
But I will tell you this. Nancy is a business person. Her and her mother have done this for almost 50 years. But it's not just a business. She is an artist. She is.
Yes.
Our little granddaughter is picking up some of this stuff. Now, I don't think she really wants to quilt necessarily, but she is into all of this color and the textures and the fabric. And Nancy eats this up when Emmy is here. They're not here that often because they live in North Carolina, but she is an artist. And people come into that place, like you said, Christine. They come into this place and they know that she's going to be able to say, okay, this color of blue matches such and such. She's just, I mean,
She's
if you walk
brilliant.
in, her website is colorsgonewild.com. So, I mean, all you walk in and you just see the color, and she's got it. It matches all the way around that place. It's very impressive, if I do say so myself.
It is.
Yeah, we're going to have your wife on the podcast, it
There
sounds
you
like,
go.
too, Bill.
Yeah.
She really appreciates what you do for her. Really. I mean, between you and, well, your sister and
Oh, my team.
your
Yeah.
team, and
Thank
then
you.
Candy Cooper.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just Candy, I'm probably letting the cat out of the bag a little bit here, but Candy texted her day before yesterday and said, I'm going to put seminars on at the building during the shop
great.
hop. So
Great.
they're
That's
going
wonderful.
to be getting back and forth on that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. She did the first year too.
Yeah.
She
mhm.
was able to support.
Last year wasn't as easy for her, but she's going to be back.
Good.
And for our listeners, Candy Cooper is another prominent artist in Wabash County, along with your wife. And there is an episode with Christine and Candy in season 1 of the ThriveIN Podcast. And so if you haven't listened to that episode yet, that's another good opportunity as well.
By the way, these chairs in this situation is a lot more comfortable than what I have at the Crystal Gale Theater over.
We'll talk to Teresa and see if we can help you out there. I know she's really glad to have you doing what you do there for the museum, and I think Alex is going to bring that up in a little bit too. But we'll talk to Teresa.
Yeah, like I
We'll
said, I'm jumping all over the place.
Oh, it's
No,
okay.
I think that's a great segue. So you
Yeah.
are a fellow podcaster
Yep.
here in Wabash County.
That's
And
right.
so tell us a little bit about how you got into that, what the podcast covers, and for our listeners that may not know who Teresa is, what everything
yes.
you're talking about.
Can I just start from when I left the YMCA, when I retired from the YMCA? I had my sporting goods store forever, and about the time that the internet really hit, it was, these coaches and athletic directors could now get things online.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Finnicle, who's a personal friend, would order jerseys, volleyball stuff, and then he'd bring it into me and say, hey, can you put numbers on these? Which, I did it for him, no big deal. But it just got to the point where coaches could get, $200 football helmets for $150, and I'm still paying $200. And it just got to the point where it was time to get out. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I got a phone call from, this because you were there, the interim executive director of what was then community service, then the YMCA, was Tammy Ford at the time. And she said, I need a resume from you. And I'm like, for what? And she said, we need an executive director. Well, I said, okay. So I did, and they ended up doing different things and worked out some different paths. And I was involved, and still am involved, with the Field of Dreams. And so that was my passion, and that is my path, and that's where I ended up, also as the sports and programming director at that time of the YMCA. Then when we built the building, we all moved down there, which was fine. But Chrissy and I, we were almost office mates at Honeywell.
I used to hobble over to your office. Well, I'd go down some stairs, and then I'd go back up some stairs. The Y used to operate inside the Honeywell Center originally.
On the West End.
The West End, and Bill had his office over there, and we chatted a lot about shared space for the time I worked for Honeywell Arts and Entertainment until you outgrew us with a big vision.
I didn't know it until later, but where I sat in that office was where W.C. Mills's office was when he ran community service all those years ago.
Yeah.
Which is another story which I have done on my podcast and done presentations and whatever else, but that's kind of cool. I mean, I never met the man, but he would be one of my local heroes because I followed in his path. Anyway, so I retired from the YMCA 2 years ago this past November.
And how long were you there?
About 21 years. I'm real close to that.
That's
So-
all. Just 21 years.
Yeah.
That's
So
all.
anyway, so they throw me a retirement party. And by the way, thanks for coming. I
Always.
appreciate it. I'm standing there with my wife and all these other dignitaries from town that showed up. Anyway, and Teresa and Jeff come. Teresa and Jeff Galley come, who Jeff and we've known each other forever. Teresa stands next to me, and she kind of looks at me and kind of gets real close, and she says, hey, I got something for you. And I'm like, you didn't have to buy me anything. She goes, no, I got an idea. And I said, what's that? And she goes, this is her exact words. would you be interested in doing some sports research for the museum? And I looked right at her and I'm like, I think I would.
This is at your retirement party?
Yes, at the retirement party.
Which you probably still weren't even retired at that point. You may have been in your last week or so, or just had retired, but then you're already committed. Okay.
Right.
Very good.
So I thought, okay, I had a few things planned out, nothing serious. But I told her, I said, this was just the end of October. And I said, look, I'll do it. But I said, I'm not doing, and Nancy's standing there listening. And she was worried that I was going to go home and sit and watch TV all day.
So she was excited that wasn't going to be the case. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't happen anyway. But anyway, I told Teresa, I said, I'll do it. But I said, I'm taking all of November and all of December off. Just flat, whatever. So I did. And then we went like we did last week. We always go to North Carolina to my daughter and son-in-law's that's our Christmas with them. And then it coincides with our granddaughter's birthday. So when we got back, I went in the next day and I was upstairs with Alec Ginnon, and him and I just up in the archives. And yeah, so about mid-March, Nancy texted me one day and she said, where are you? And I said, I'm at the museum. And she said, do you go there every day? And I'm like, yeah, I do.
And so your official title is sports docent?
So to speak, yeah.
At the museum?
Mm-hmm. So then about a little over a year ago, she comes upstairs and just one afternoon and she said, hey, I've got a proposition for you. And I said,
Wait, who's she?
Teresa.
Oh, Teresa. Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Teresa says, I got a proposition for you. And I said, what's that? And she says, well, Brian Hoppert has taken another job. And she said, I've got something I can offer you. And I'm like, okay. I am not an HVAC guy or any kind, construction,
Yeah,
whatever.
because Brian handled that before,
and he
right?
was
He was
good at it.
facilities.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For a long time, right?
So guess who the facilities guy is now?
Is it?
Yeah.
Facilities and the sports
Amazing.
docent.
Yeah.
But she's like, no, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. We have people come and do that. I need you to tell me when something's wrong so that we can do that. So
Facility management.
yeah,
That's a nice gig. There you go. Yeah.
but I'm actually the sports curator, and that
Sports curator, not docent. My
she
apologies.
got me business cards. Which, if you want one, I'll get you one.
Yeah, we'll take one.
All right. But anyway, it says
Like we need it. We already have your contact.
it says facility director and sports curator.
Wonderful.
Of the Wabash County History Museum. Love it. Love it. Love it.
You know, Teresa has that ability. She's very good. She's like, yes, this guy is going to make a huge difference because we have a great legacy in sports here in our community. And she and the museum does a great job of preserving that and sharing that story. And so to bring you in, who has been so involved with our sports programs for so many years, even after your profession or owning your own sports business, that was really ingenious of her to catch you before you'd even had a chance to consider anything else.
You would be the only one that would know this if you do. But I was involved with Little League right out of high school. My dad was the Little League president, and he pulls one of my buddies and I together and says, hey, we're going to start a T-ball league, and it's going to be 2 teams, and you and your buddy are going to coach them. I'm like, yeah, right. But we did. And up until 3 years ago, I coached every year something until right before I retired.
And when you say something, baseball or
Baseball
other
was
sports?
baseball was most of it. I also did some basketball and a little bit of football, but I'm a baseball guy. I'm a big baseball guy. I was the like what Adam did to me a couple of weeks ago. All of a sudden, I was the president of the Wabash Babe Ruth Association, which actually opened a lot of doors because of that, I was part of the brain trust that ended up being able to construct and put together the Field of Dreams, which I'm still the president of that board after all these years. Now I just mow. I mow during the summer, but
What Bill's referring to is that Bill and I serve on the Wabash City Plan Commission together.
Oh, yeah.
And at our last meeting, we had to nominate officers for 2026, and Bill is the now president of the City Plan
You were
Commission.
kind enough to make that nomination.
I was.
So
I
I
was.
nominated him too, and he turned it down.
You didn't have the votes. It sounds like he had the votes. Sounds like he had the votes. So let's talk a little bit about Field of Dreams, Bill. So for our listeners that may not be as familiar with Wabash, right? So Field of Dreams is just off of 24. And when was Field of Dreams, that initial plan to construct Field of Dreams, and then what's it look like today? How many leagues are there, kids out there in the summertime? What does that look like?
Okay, Wabash Little League at one time was kind of a vagabond. The softball diamond behind the pool was the Major League diamond. We opened that when I was 11 years old. What is the Doc Pfeiffer field down in the park, that is it's now the Challenger League for kids. That was the original Little League diamond. That's where it started. So you had those two, and then we had like where the sewage plant is now, there were 2 or 3 fields there.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. That's where soccer started in this town.
I had no
right
idea.
there. I'll tell you something you don't know. Where the RV park is right now,
Yeah.
my grandfather played football there from Wabash High School. That was the original high school football field, but it really was the WAA field, the Wabash Athletic Association, which was a pro football league.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
There is a picture that I have hanging in my little office down there, and there's also a mural in the back as you're going up the stairs.
Oh, of the museum, yes.
Yes. Teresa and I are standing there talking one day. This is last year or whatever. And I'm looking over her shoulder, and I went like this. And she goes, what? And I go, that's my grandfather right there. He's in one of those pictures.
Have you covered him or that football league in one of your podcast episodes?
Sure have.
So where can we listen to that podcast?
If you go to YouTube,
Yep.
and Jeff doesn't have them all on there yet. The last 3 or 4 have been.
Okay.
Go to YouTube and type in Wabash County Museum. It pops up, and
Perfect.
then all of those are strategically in there. If that one is not there, because some of them we did on Facebook Live originally,
Yeah.
and those don't stay,
Right. They disappear.
right,
Mhm.
I would be more than happy to make a presentation, come back and do this again. I mean,
Wonderful.
it's
Well, this way, our listeners who hear you alluding to such a strong role that you're playing at the museum, and obviously it's at the Wabash County Museum, you're passionate about it. We want to make sure that they have the opportunity to listen to more of that. And as you build that catalog on YouTube, we'll make sure there's a link in your show notes so that people can find it easily.
cool. Are you sure this is going to last an hour?
It'll last as long as you want it to.
Well, because it may last longer, because I'm one of these short story long guys. So that picture, there's a mural, and I have a smaller one in my little office, but I took Nancy down there at the corner of Smith Street and Carroll Street, in the middle of the street. You stand and hold that picture up and look to the northeast. You can see the courthouse, a couple of the steeples. Now, obviously, the vegetation has changed or whatever, but you can see where that was 100 years later.
That's cool.
To me, Nancy's like, do we have to stand in the street? And I'm like, no, we can stand back here, but I just want you to see this.
Yeah.
So anyway, there you have it. But Wabash Athletic Association was started by a guy by the name of Henry B. Hutchins, who owned a laundry business here in town at the time. He was a player, but he was also an advocate. And he had all these contacts. And they were playing teams out of Chicago, Lafayette, Evansville, Detroit. Gus DeRay and Newt Rockney played against them
Wow.
long before Gus came here to buy DeRay Chevrolet, or what became DeRay Chevrolet. But this was like before the turn of the century. Like
You have to find it.
1894.
You have to find it fascinating to see how easily weave together these relationships. And the more you're at the museum, even more so these relationships, how they've left such a legacy and an impact right here in our community.
And when I'm doing research, I'm looking for names, and you find that, they have daughters. So there isn't always a straight trail of,
Yeah.
Harry Hutchins had a son, this, that, whatever. But you find out that he had a daughter who had a son later that, wow.
Yeah.
And it's like, I understand Ancestry.com because my sister does a lot of that for our family. But I get down some of these rabbit holes, you guys. And it's like, I'll look at Alec and I'm like, okay, dude, I'm going to write this down because I'm headed down this rabbit hole, but I need to come back to this.
Yeah.
He has to have so much fun. Alec has to, working with you.
He thinks I'm nuts.
Well, that is true. We can't argue that point, but he has to have so much fun working with you. Bill.
It's fun. He's kind of quiet, but if I ask him to find something for me, he is on it. In fact, he emailed me as I was walking out of my house a while ago and said, hey, I don't know if you're still looking for information on Bob Bailey, who is a drag racer from here in town. He said, but I found more. And I'm like, okay, I'll get it tomorrow morning.
That's awesome.
Just stuff like that. What else you got for me, big boy?
I don't want to age you on the podcast, Bill, but hearing you talk about you began coaching when you were in high school, a T-ball team. How many years were you coaching baseball? Were you coaching sports? And then if you'd be willing to share some of your favorite stories, obviously the hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of young people at this point that you've coached through sports. But what are some of your favorite stories from your time in that?
First of all, it was 40 plus years. I think there was maybe one, maybe two where I coached a little bit, but had other things going on, but I was still involved. I coached everything from Little League to Babe Ruth, which is now junior and senior league. We played in the park down at what I still call the Babe Ruth Diamond. I ended up being the president of that league, and then I ended up being the state commissioner, still coaching at the same time. We put on Midwest regionals that were in the park and also at Rude Field because I was on Chris Rude's original team. You didn't know that? My dad recruited Chris to coach in what became Babe Ruth, was called Pony League when I played. And so Chris coached that for a year, and then Paul Gunderman, who was the athletic director and also the baseball coach, asked Chris to be his assistant. That was my sophomore year. And then Chris took over the next year, and I played for him as a junior and senior. Now, I thought that it would be, it'd be easy because I played for Chris. I know how he is. Wrong. One, I thought I was a little bit better than I really was. And I played. But, we had guys that were excellent. Yeah. In fact, there are guys that are in the Hall of Fame, in the Wabash County Hall of Fame and the Wabash High School Hall of Fame that were on this team. And we were pretty good. We won 3 sectionals in a row. And then they still won a few sectionals after that. But then there was the 86 team that won the state, and they were huge. And I mean this as a huge compliment, a huge overachieving team. It was lightning in a bottle. Chris knew how to coach, whatever. So I coached that, did all that, and then I became a volunteer assistant for Chris. I was still doing some of the Babe Ruth stuff, but I was also taking 16 and under teams to either Florida or Phoenix in the summer and coaching in the Junior Olympic National Tournament that they picked the junior national team, the Olympic team, out of. And we had one guy that actually made the squad. He ended up not making the team, but after all those years, but it was a neat experience. And what I always told the kids, and especially the parents, was, I want you to see not how good you are, but how far away you are, how hard you're going to have to work to get to the next level. And again, there's stories.
There's some of that wisdom you offer. Growing up, you either had Bill Barrows say your name at some point during a game, and then, again, like Alex said, not to age you, but then at some point, you're saying your children's name.
And children.
Yeah. And so there are these special moments that each of us as people who live here and grew up here, associate with that voice that he has that's an identifier. And I don't know if either of you two, Alex or Adam, have heard that about Bill.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I would say is just critical to one of the things that makes Wabash County, what makes City of Wabash what it is the opportunity, whether it's through sports. Obviously, all of us can probably, that played sports, tell stories about those coaches that poured into us that we still remember today, that shaped things way after sports themselves, right? And the stories about you, Bill, is that for sure. But whether it's a teacher, whether it's any mentor in a young person's life in those formative years, it's just so important, right? Those lessons you were telling the parents and the kids then about the meaning of that opportunity, those lessons transcend sports.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of them.
Oh, sure.
There's a lot of them. Mike Gray. Mike Gray was my 8th grade. He was right out of college. He was my 8th grade Indiana history teacher. We are very close friends. Our families are very close. They come to our house for Thanksgiving every year, he and Sue. And my brother-in-law, Mike, was my brother-in-law's mentor. My brother-in-law was a student at Manchester College at the time and was a football player and wanted to be a football coach. And Mike helped get him as an intern coach, ended up being a coach here. And then he left. He was here for a while and left and went to a little place called West Holmes High School in Northeast Ohio, between Canton and Columbus. That's just so you get a picture. Anyway, he just retired. After all those years, he was a history teacher because Mike was a history teacher and a football coach. I mean, like I said, this all spawns things. You said, and first of all, you can't date me. Everybody knows how old I am. I don't care.
Well, but you just start to think about,
I just had my 50th class reunion, okay?
Well, happy 50th class reunion age. But I think back at special moments throughout our lives, and I think, yes, there are lots of coaches out there, Bill. Yes, there are lots of mentors and teachers. There is something special about you and your ability to be present for youth and parents of youth. And then as you have, now I don't have any grandchildren yet, but you mentioned grandchildren too. And you just have a real knack for seeing potential in people, no matter what they are doing or contributing to a community. You just really have that knack, and it's a gift.
Thank you. I had a guy that played for me back in the 90s, texted me a couple of weeks before Christmas and said, "Hey, my daughter just had a baby. Can I bring over my grandson and so you can meet him?"
Yeah, see, I'm
like,
right.
Cool.
I'm right.
Yeah. He probably still calls you coach.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Once a coach, always a coach.
So then here's just another quick story. We were this is one of my reunions. We were out at the Kettle the night before the reunion, which, again, my buddies, and we would come in on.
That's tradition.
Oh, yeah. But we
That's
would come in like
tradition.
on Friday or whatever. They would come in on Friday, and we sneak off someplace on Friday. So we ended up at the Kettle, which really wasn't sneaking off. But anyway, we're standing there, and it's pretty busy, and we're just standing there waiting for a table. And my brother-in-law, who is married to my wife's sister, he and I went to high school together. We've known each other forever. He's kind of quiet, kind of analytical. All of a sudden, these two guys come running over and jump on me and hug me. And Nancy said that he, my brother-in-law, Dave, said, "Who are those guys?" And she has gotten used to this over the years. She's like, "Oh, it's just a couple of guys that played for him." He's like, everybody does that? And she goes, "Oh, yeah." You know how many times we've been at a ball game someplace and she'll grab me by the arm and go, "All right, Mr. President, it's time to go home."
No truer words.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, so I coached under Coach Rude as a volunteer coach. And then after Coach's tragic death, Larry Pullman was the athletic director. He called me that morning. Mike Gray was the person that found him.
I didn't know that.
Really had a big impact on Mike because they were really close.
Sure.
Anyway, so I ended up in Larry Pullman's office for 3 solid days with trying to, help kids. Larry verbally, this wasn't a contract or anything, asked me if I would step up and take the team, and I said no. It was right. I mean, it was like the day that practice started that spring. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Let's let his assistant, who was Mike Smalley, let Mike do it, and we'll find him some help, and then I'll help when I can. Because, I mean, I had a business to run.
Sure.
But you go through all that, and you become a mentor to even more people. Now, that being said, you want to know all this stuff I'm going to tell you. Mayor Van Landingham. I played softball with and against, fast pitch softball, with and against Bob for several years. He came to me one night when we were playing against his team and asked me if I would join the travel team, which I did. As I went through this stuff, Chris Rude was a genius in baseball tactics. I mean, I'm serious. He would go, Adam, you would be playing third base, and somebody would miss a bunt. And he would walk down the line and point right in front of where you're standing, and he would go, you're going to lay this bunt down right here on this pitch. I don't care that everybody knows this is what we're going to do. And he did. That's what you did. If you didn't, you weren't playing. I can still see the interview before the state championship game, Jerry Baker with Mel Wysong, who was the coach at Marion, and Chris Rude, the coach at Wabash, and Coach Wysong, who I knew reasonably well, he's like, well, we beat them in the regular season. We're going to do this. We're going to do that, whatever. And Chris looked at the camera and he said, we're going to bunt. We're going to be fundamental. We're going to play good defense. We're going to make the plays. It's going to come down to what play is not made. And that's exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. So fast forward to, well, I was already playing. Back to Bob. Bob not only was tactical, but Chris was one of these guys that sometimes he was mad, sometimes he wasn't, but he would take you out of a game, not tell you what was going on, send somebody else in, or whatever. Bob, when you played for Bob, you knew where you stood. He told this story, God knows.
Wait, sweet Bob Van Landingham.
Oh, yeah.
So sweet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can't even imagine.
You ready for this story?
Can't even imagine.
I finally became a pretty good hitter, and he told me we'd had several games, and we were playing against one of our rivals. They were the Peru Merchants, and he said, now here's what I want you to do. You're hot. You're doing really well. I don't want you to swing at a pitch until you have 2 strikes. I want you to be able to see what this guy's going to throw so that you can use it later in the game, which makes all kinds of sense. But I wasn't that smart. So the first guy gets a base hit was Ronnie Hensley, if you know Ronnie Hensley. Ronnie gets a base hit. Dave Frischman, Dr. Dave Frischman, gets a hit. Steve Dyer comes up, and Steve's just real tactical. He walks. So the bases are loaded. Guess who's coming up?
Oh, no.
I hit the first pitch up on the railroad tracks. And as I come around third base, Bob shakes my hand and says, sit down, you're done. You don't know how many times.
You didn't watch the first 2 strikes go by.
No, I did not. That first one came in about as big as this thing, and I'm swinging, man. And I learned a big lesson that day, but he told every time we were someplace he would tell that story. And it hit home. But I picked up things from both of those 2 guys that's how I coached, because I wasn't going to be the guy that took Alex out of a game and put Adam in and not told you why. I mean, I would tell kids, look, I got to take you out to put this guy in. Keep yourself ready. You can go back in. Those are the types of, Chris did not do that. He was a great coach, but he wasn't, when it came to tactical stuff, he didn't communicate very well. Bob was the great communicator. He was Ronald Reagan before Ronald Reagan.
And Bob Van Landingham was a mayor for how long in Wabash?
3 terms.
3 terms. Yeah.
He's the reason I'm on the plan commission. Thanks, Adam.
Can you blame Mayor Van Landingham or Adam for being on city council? We can get into that maybe in a little bit of how
no,
that story goes.
although Bob thinks it's funny, but yeah, no, I can't blame Bob for that.
Well, no different than what you learned from Bob and from Coach Root. I'm sure that there's several kids adults that you've coached that are coaches now, whether it's for their son's team or high school coaches elsewhere, that I'm sure learned those same lessons.
And they don't all live here.
Yeah.
They don't all live here. Yeah. Christine, you went to Southwood. Do you remember Zach Dials? He's a little younger than you, maybe.
Now we're aging Christine. This is fun.
Not really.
This is fun. Yeah. No, I don't.
He played for me. He was a really, really good pitcher. He ended up being drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays, played in the minor leagues for several years, ended up bouncing around a little bit, ended up with the Washington Nationals organization, caught on with them, and then decided, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And so he started his own business with a couple of other guys that were major leaguers, and he's still doing that. And it's like in Arlington, Virginia.
That's so cool.
And he's still out there, and he'll text me about once every couple of weeks, just check in.
And what business is it? What do they do?
He is a scout for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's a pitching expert. He really is, and he's a physical trainer. That's what he went. He went to the University of Kentucky, pitched there, and then was drafted
from Southwood.
Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed that you don't know more about your alma mater.
I can't place him. I can't.
There's not, love Southwood, love schools in Wabash County. There's not that many folks that have been in the major league from Wabash County.
Stan Leland?
Yeah, well, I know Stan.
That's my cousin.
I didn't know that either.
The Pony League team that I played for, the first game we played, and I played third base, and we lost, and we're practicing the next day, and he goes, hey, he said, you're going to catch tomorrow night. And I said, no, I'm not. I've never caught in my life. I've never even put the equipment on. He's like, you're going to catch tomorrow night. We need your arm. We need somebody that's got some savvy behind the plate. I'm like, well, you got the wrong guy, dude. He said, if you don't catch, you're not playing. I'm like, shoot.
How'd you do?
Okay. Like I said, Christine, I thought I was better than I really was.
Well, I appreciate your honesty now then.
But Stan was a ball to catch because he was 13, I was 15, and he just threw the ball through a wall. You just held your glove up and he hit it, and nobody could touch him. But there were a lot of screen trips, and then Rude would stand over there in that dugout, and he would yell, no screen trips.
What's a screen trip?
It's like when the ball goes to the fence, gets past the catcher and goes to the fence.
Did you, either of you two play, my co-host, play baseball?
I played baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
I was a catcher as well.
Were you? Ended up, I loved it.
You look like a shortstop.
Both of you guys.
Second base, too.
Both of you guys look like middle infielders. Seriously.
I was lefty.
Really?
Yeah.
No, you couldn't have.
First base.
First base. Okay, there you go. All right. I caught all those years in high school, and then I walked on at Purdue. No, don't even think that. I sat a lot.
What'd you study at Purdue?
I made a huge mistake. Huge mistake. I went there to be a teacher, a coach, and a trainer. Kinesiology is really hard. You know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up in recreation and business, which was fine. Mm-hmm. Back then, Purdue had two different phys ed schools. You had teaching, coaching, physical training. You had business, recreation, and broadcasting. Mm-hmm. I didn't take the broadcasting part. I wish I had all these years later, because I did radio forever.
Mm-hmm.
And
some of that may have just come naturally to you, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could have been Bob Costas, or not.
No,
or not. Yeah, but anyway, I all those years later, I'm thinking, and Nancy would say, well, maybe you need to get into that now. I'm like, no, you end up being the low guy on the pole. You're at some small radio station doing whatever else. It's not, I was in my 40s then. No, I'm not going to do that.
You're making a huge impact now, and now the storytelling that you get to do with the museum is pretty incredible.
This could last 3 hours.
Well, Bill, what I pick up on, and you mentioned earlier about Reagan, you mentioned Reagan. I think of a political statement that was made once that was, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I almost put that here locally and put it on you. and that you've done so many things. You've been asked to coach. You've been asked to run the YMCA or the sports department at the YMCA. You get asked to go to the museum, and almost I haven't heard you say no to any of those opportunities.
I'm not real good at saying no. I got to be honest, and I'm
never
being
told
serious.
me no.
And there's thousands of people in Wabash County and in Wabash that are fortunate because of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And
I
you do
really
it, but you do it with heart, and it seems like you find enjoyment in every single one of these things.
And passion. And yeah.
Realistically, there are very few things that I'm involved in that I don't have fun at. One of my best buddies told me we retired about the same time. We're the same age. And I asked him to be involved in this podcast thing, Rick Harness.
Oh, with the museum?
Yeah. And I said, Rick, I want to get, because it's three guys that I used to broadcast with. And I said, I want to get back together and I do this. I've been asked to do this podcast thing. Would you be interested? And he said, and I quote, I refuse in retirement to do anything that doesn't bring me joy. And I'm like, that is brilliant. And that's what I'm doing now. And really, it's kind of what I've always done. But there were a few things I've done that I did it, and I did it with a smile on my face, but I struggled a little bit.
Yeah. What a fulfilling life, though, to be able to say that, Bill.
Yeah,
I mean, and you're
true.
plenty of time
I
left.
keep telling this guy he's going to be the mayor of this town.
Well, on that note, we've just heard about.
Don't even
We've
start.
just heard a lot about your decades, lifetime of pouring into this community and the future of this community with all the young people's lives that you're impacting. And so lifetime of service and all the different roles we've covered. What we haven't talked about, though, is your public service stint outside of the Plain Commission Board
Right.
and Adam nominating you. So you're a city council member now, and 2 years in? 1 year in?
1 year in.
1 year
1
in.
year into 1 year into it's 2 years into the term, but I've only served one of them. Wade Weaver was the original District 1, and he moved out of town, so Scott asked me to be involved.
And when we think about people running for local office or representing a community, you can't think of a better person, resume, the type of person you want to serve at the local level. And so, but what was your reasoning behind that? Obviously, maybe not every time, but brings you joy. You're in retirement. You don't need to do it. But what was the driving factor behind that?
Let's go back farther than that. About 20 years ago, Scott Long and I and Shelley Neal, do you remember her? She was a city councilman. And Greg Metz. We all ran as at-large candidates.
For city council.
For city council. And it was four of us involved, but two were going to get it. Shelley won. She was already a city councilman, so she had experience. She won going away. Scott was second. He beat me by 2 votes.
So this is
And
when
he's
Mayor Long
never-
gets on to city council.
Yeah.
Yes. And he's never let me forget it, and that's fine. But here's my out, and I'm going to use this. I told Scott Long when he asked me to be involved with the city council, because, I'm on a lot of different committees, boards, whatever. And I said, Scott, I will do this, but before you make a commitment, understand, I'm not going to run in 3 years. I'm just not.
For
And he
city
said-
council, for
right,
re-election.
Right.
Okay.
And he said, why? And I said, here's why. Because I ran for city council against you 20-some years ago, and I was fine with that until the last 2 days, and that competitive edge got me. And my wife looked at me, and she said, Bill, if you ever run for office again, I will leave you. That's my out.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good out.
Because you won in a caucus midterm, so you didn't have to run for election.
I was
money.
appointed.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see. You never know. But John and Anna Gackenheimer live next door to us, and they were on me about it before. We think the world of them. And it's going to be, it'll be hard. It'll be hard.
What have you enjoyed about it so far?
Guys like him, guys like Adam, because it's fun. And Adam and I've had, we've had at least 2 impromptu plan commission meetings at Kroger's.
Yeah.
You don't have a quorum, so no official business.
That's
but
right.
Did you hear Eric the other night? He said you didn't have a quorum, so it's not a meeting. I'm
That's
like,
right.
yep, it wasn't, but we still did. Yeah. But anyway, it's fun. I enjoy it. I have not totally enjoyed the solar issue that we're dealing with, but it's a necessary evil. It's got to get done. We've got to finish it so it can go to the city council. There's some footballing back and forth, and it's legit. But
Those are hard conversations, though, that come
Very
before
hard.
you, and you're so contemplative, I'm sure, to take all the information in.
But I'm going to say it, Adam, we've overthought a lot of it. We've overthought a lot. That's one of our Kroger meetings. That's what we discussed.
But we do have to be thorough, and
Yes.
we're representing citizens on both sides of the issue, some that live in the county edges in that buffer zone, some that live in town. And we have to be able to take all of their opinions in. And it is really makes you understand how government can get really slow, though, when you sit through a process like this that we've been doing now for the last 13 months that I've been on the Plan Commission.
And it started before that. I mean,
yeah.
it started before that. We weren't into it. What they were worried about then was we had 3 members out of, what do we got, 8, 7? Whatever. We had 3 members that were going off. And so they were worried. There were people who live in the buffer zone that were worried, wait a minute, you got 3 people going off, and actually I could have gone off. So you're going to have people come on here that are inexperienced, don't know anything about this, and you're going to be voting. No, we weren't doing that to them. That's just not, I wouldn't allow that. And I know John Burnsworth wouldn't have either. So it played out well. You've done a really nice job, my friend.
Thank you.
Making people think.
Thank you.
So
He has that effect on people.
so do you.
Well, he's been giving me pause to think for like the last 6+ years.
Bill, as you think back over the time that you've volunteered, coached, been on city council, plan commission, run different organizations, now you're at the museum. If you're talking to the Bill Barrows from when you were in high school, what advice would you give that Bill?
Throw yourself into whatever interests you and do it the right way. Keep a smile on your face and work hard. I mean, I could go into a long soliloquy, but that's be loyal. Be loyal to the people that you're dealing with, that you're volunteering for.
And if it's something that, not to put words in your mouth, but what I heard you say is that if you find the right thing, throwing yourself into something that interests you, hopefully the smile and the work hard piece comes naturally, at least most of the time, not that you don't have hard days.
Brings me joy.
Yep.
Brings me joy.
That's right. If anybody wants more of that deep-seated, deep-rooted advice from Bill Barrows, they can find you almost every single morning
Yep.
at Modocs.
We open the place. Chris Beecham and I pretty much open the place. Alex, he's there once in a while on Mondays. Or is it Mondays now?
Used to be Mondays.
be
Now
Monday?
it's just
Whenever.
I see you when I'm coming into
Yeah.
the office.
When the door opens, we take in the summer, we take the chairs and stuff out. We put the awning out. We turn the lights on, hand them our cups, and by the time we get done, they're ready to go. Then we sit down and
I think
they treat us pretty good.
For somebody
think
that's not lived in a small town before, just listen to that little
Yeah.
segment there, and that'll tell you a lot you need to know about how it works in small
Well,
town.
Chris Beecham talks about his brother and sister-in-law lived in Knoxville, and they're both originally from Boston, and they were considering moving up here. He had an application in at Ford and was hoping to get the job. This is several years ago. They're up here, and they're sitting there at Modocs with us, and Matt Bruss comes in, and Matt was the chief of police at that time. And of course, we're standing there talking to him, and she says, "Who's that?" And he goes, "That's the chief of police." "You know the chief of police?"
Welcome to Wabash County.
Exactly.
And then
Yes,
5
we
minutes
do.
later, the mayor walked in, and then 5 minutes later,
The sheriff walked in. Yeah.
Mhm. But Chris tells that story a lot. That's small town. That's us.
Neighborly, relational.
The thing about it is, in a small town, and we all know this, you're doing things, and you've got to you've got to not think of it from the standpoint of advantage. Okay, if I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to volunteer to coach this team. Are they going to pay me? Don't even think about that. It's got to be love of what you want to do or love of who you're going to do it with.
That's right.
Because I wasted a small fortune buying baseball gloves for kids that didn't have them. Just stuff like that. And I don't regret a dime ever. And it's just, that's not in my makeup.
I've got two more questions. Adam and Christine may have more, but I've got two more questions. One's serious and one is less serious. Which would you like first?
Give me the serious.
Serious question, and it's a two-parter.
Okay.
You've spent your entire life in Wabash, seen the community. You talk about some monumental experiences before Field of Dreams, being a part of Field of Dreams being built, the stellar communities, the bricks, all of the things. You've seen Wabash evolve and Wabash look differently over the years. What excites you the most about the future of Wabash and Wabash County, and what scares you or what makes you nervous about the future of Wabash?
What I love about the future of Wabash is, you and I have talked about this a little bit. This community, this county is becoming a haven for people who want to retire. I know several couples who have either moved here or moved back here to retire. That says a lot for our community. I remember when I was in college, when I was in high school, I'm going to leave, I'm never coming back, I'll come back see my parents. All these years later, why would you leave? I mean, to me, the excuses for wanting to leave have all been taken care of. Fort Wayne, if you want to go to a place where a different restaurant than what you're used to here, go to Fort Wayne. You want to see concerts other than what Honeywell brings, and they bring in a bunch, and they're good ones. Go to Indianapolis. I mean, Nancy wanted to see Mannheim Steamroller several years ago at Christmas time. We went to a Colts game in the afternoon, went to Mannheim Steamroller that night.
It was a win for each of you.
Exactly.
It was a win for each of you.
It's things like that. And what, let me finish. Let me expound a little bit. It's, you hear all these things and all of these different communities, but just sitting outside of Modocs or wherever. And by the way, kudos to Angie and Mike and Kelly and those people, because they're there every day. But anyway, you listen to these people and they come in here and you know that we're doing it right when people say, how do you have all the things you have in this community? I'm from Huntington. I'm from Peru. I'm from Warsaw. I'm from here, whatever. How do you have what we have? We are so lucky because we had civic leaders, like I said earlier, Richard Ford, Bill Hensley,
Bob Van Landingham.
yeah, some of them are philanthropists that have the means to help. Some of them are just people that roll up their sleeves and go at it. And that's what I love about this town. Now, on the downside, I really take offense. I really take offense when somebody says, "Oh, this town stinks. There's nothing here for us. There's not that."
Same.
I used to be that person. When I was in high school, I was that person. Exactly. Exactly. I hate that.
Yeah.
There is so much here. You just have to know where to find it or who to ask to find it.
Yeah, or just go to Modocs, because you'll be sitting there every morning and you'll give them the what for.
Oh, yeah.
Between 7 and 9?
7 and 8.
Play conservative.
See, I've
Let
gotten
them
to the
catch
point-
you. 7 to 8.
I've
Okay.
gotten to the point where I'm usually at the museum by 8:30 because I'm still the early one. I've always been the early one.
Yeah.
Teresa will text me and she'll say, "We've got a technician coming to do such and such, and I'm just not going to make it. Are you anywhere close?" I'm like, "I'm already here." No
Lights
big
are
deal.
on. Lights are on.
But it upsets me when somebody says, "Well, there's not enough housing. There's not enough this. There's not enough that." Give us some time. We're working on it. We have proven that. And I'm talking about the community leaders. I'm not talking about me, you.
Oh, it's all everybody. Everybody. Nope, that's right.
Okay, what's the
The less serious question?
The less serious question.
cannot be in the city of Wabash, but you and Nancy have a free Saturday night. What are you going to do in Wabash County?
Can't be in the city of Wabash?
Can't be in Wabash.
What are we going to do?
In Wabash County on a Saturday night. And then we'll hear your favorite Wabash experience too.
That's pretty simple. To be honest, probably, realistically, LeGros.
The speakeasy's a favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that have been done there, and you well know because you live there now, some of the things that have been rebuilt, redone, proudly so, that's where we would probably start. There's a few little places in Manchester that we have some friends that live up there that we'll go once in a while.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
And so what's the easy answer in Wabash?
For us?
Yep.
Nancy gets upset with me. I had lunch with a friend yesterday, impromptu, at Market Street. She gets upset if I go to Market Street without her.
I've seen you all at Market Street a few times.
She's like, Kelly Thompson's like, she says, is that your parking spot? Is that? No, we had dinner with Kelly before Christmas. Nancy and her are working on a couple of things. And she's like, your truck's always in the same place, no matter where you are, whether it's Modocs or Market Street. And then, so I'll pull up and my spot won't be there. And I'll say, okay, dear, get us in. So I'll let her out. If I have to walk, I'm not happy. I'll do it.
You're used to your spot.
Yep. Nancy would also say the Honeywell Center because she volunteers there. She loves the shows, and I'll go with her. So there you have it. I got a couple other things. When you guys are done, I got a couple of things.
I don't have any specific questions for you, but it's been an honor to be on the City Plan Commission with you. And I wish as a young kid that growing up, I played a lot of sports, and I wish I would have had the opportunity to be coached by you. I've seen you in action. I've seen you, organize all the youth sports through the YMCA as my kids were growing up, and I missed out on that opportunity, but I can definitely see the impact that you've had on this community, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. That's one of the things that always made it for me. Sometimes people would say things. There would be people, we'd have basketball going on in the wood gym and soccer going on in the other gym, and people are standing around and, people that I've known forever, and they'd go, how do you do this? I'm like, relax. I do this every day. It's no big deal. What we have not discussed is the sports research in depth a little and another project I'm working on. Can I go there?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes.
Please.
Are we breaking news?
No, not really.
Oh,
I didn't know if we needed a sound effect from the board over there.
We'd have to have Adam reach over because I don't know how to do any of that.
We might be giving people information that don't already have it.
That's perfect.
Perfect.
One of the things that Teresa asked me to do in doing this research was we are in the process of really doing a complete makeover of that place over time. Yeah. It's going to be a year or so, but a lot of the exhibits are going to be completely redone. That does not mean that we are going to take out, such and such's plaque and take it downstairs and leave it. Mm-hmm. It's going to be more on a rotating basis of different things. Yeah. It's going to be much more interesting, which it's interesting now, but it's going to be much more interesting. It's also going to be a much more interactive. Say, for instance, we have a couple of kiosks that we are going to use that are going to have, let's say, in the sports department, because I've done all this, it'll be departmentalized. Say, for instance, I've got a file that has outstanding coaches of Wabash County or outstanding football coaches, basketball, whatever. And you can go to that, touch it, and it brings all that up. And then if you want to read their bio and see a picture, you hit another one, touch it again, and it'll pop up. And that's just a small.
Wow.
But it's not just sports, but I've done the sports. Mm-hmm. So I know what's going to happen. And I just know what she has shown me, what Teresa has shown me, and what we're trying to do between her and Cody, and then Jeff as the Jeff is actually the historic curator, and he's very good.
Yeah.
All I know is what she's shown me, and it's outstanding. And the people that we're working with are out of, I think, Cincinnati or Dayton, and they've been over here once already and got some other things they're going to do, and they have some ideas that we didn't even have. So that's one thing. The other thing is, along those, well, there's two things. What she originally wanted me to do was, can you spend some time, come up with a sports timeline for Wabash County? And I'm like, yeah, when do you need it? And she said, I need it by February 15th. I had it done by middle of January. This would have been 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's going to be more of a timeline type theme. I mean, if you've been to the museum of late, when you walk in, there is a path, so to speak. There's the glacier the glacier era. There's the Native Americans. There's canal. There's this. You kind of find your way around. But it's going to be similar to that, but it's going to be timeline based.
Yeah.
So that if you say, gee, what was going on in 1837? You can go and look, 1837, boom, and see what
How cool.
kind of,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. The other thing is, and I think I touched on it earlier, I do this podcast. It's usually the third Thursday of every month at 10 o'clock with my three buddies, Rick Harness, Jim Landrum, and Steve McClure. And it's in the theater, Crystal Gale Theater, and we have a ball. And it started out it's called Talking Sports. Started out just talking sports. Next thing you know, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? I could bring in such and such. We had Stan Leland several months ago. We had some guys that played for the Wabash Express, if you know what that was. It was an adult football team, similar to the WAA, but way, way later. A bunch of guys that brought in information on that. One of my favorites, LaFountain High School burned down in 1961. So the guys the students that went there ended up going to Noble Township, which was where W.C. Mills is, and they went to school there while they rebuilt that school. Well, they played each other in the sectional. So there was a huge rivalry.
Yeah.
So we had Orrin Ginnon, we had Tom Rigney, and Mose Medley, who were the three of the stars of that LaFountain team, come in. And I mean, it was like 2 hours, boom, it was over. And we spent so much time with those guys, and it was so much fun. And they gave us such good information, including some pictures and things like that. We'll have those guys back because we are not done. We had a guy that used to coach here and was also one of our radio guys after he got out of coaching. His name was Brian Tonsoni. He was at Northfield. And we talked about he was here in December. He has a thing called, gosh darn it. You ever heard of bracketology basketball? He does something. He's a teacher at Delphi High School. He came up with a formula of that before they did. And he has his students do that every year. It's become a curriculum item. They get credit for it at the school. Well, he also is a huge IU guy. So he's got a podcast, and it's called Assembly Call. He does it from his house, and he's got two or three other, some of them fairly prominent IU people that he has on every week. And now with Indiana in the championship game, this whole thing, he went to the Rose Bowl. I'm texting him during the Rose Bowl, and he's doing like recordings and stuff from the Rose Bowl. So it's just people who are involved with sports that have been involved in sports too. And I've got Terry Seidel coming in a few months. He was the Southwood football coach when they won the state championship. He's coming. He doesn't know it, but I've got some of his assistants coming to be there that day. A guy by the name of Larry Vaughn, who used to be at White's with Steve McClure. And we're going to talk about White's sports when they actually had sporting teams. And a guy by the name of Chuck Gaither, who was the head track coach at White's back in the 70s. And they won the state championship in the mile relay. And we're trying to get him later in the summer. But that team may end up becoming more prominent because of what I'm going to tell you next.
Oh.
Teresa asked me about if I knew anybody that would be interested in heading up a Wabash County Athletic or Sports Hall of Fame. And I said, yeah, I might know somebody. Or she knew I was talking about myself. So, I had done all this research already. So some of it I could just plug in here and there. Well, I got a committee together, and we have a nominating committee, and we spent a lot of time researching different aspects, different angles, different coaches, different players, whatever, including Manchester University. And I have put together, well, first of all, we did it, and we inducted the first class in early August of last year. And it was really cool. And when you contact these people or their relatives and tell them, we've done this, we're starting this Hall of Fame, you've been nominated, you're going to be inducted such and such a time, whatever. It was really, really cool. This is a huge labor of love for me. So I spent, after we did that, and we put in, people that will watch this will know some of these names. A guy by the name of Chris Rude. Who else? I just happened to bring the list. Here is the list of, if you don't mind me reading this, a list of the 2025 inaugural class. Chris Schenkel, who was a broadcaster. He's from east of Manchester. Gus DeRay. George Mullen, who was a baseball player, played for the Detroit Tigers, still to this day holds several Detroit Tiger pitching records. A guy by the name of Dutch Struck, who was a Wabash football and basketball coach back in the day, L.H. Carpenter. Did you know that L.H. Carpenter was the head football coach of the mythical state champions of 1921?
No.
Bill Milliner, Bob Jellybean Jones, who was a big wrestler, W.C. Mills, Glenn Kuhlman, you've heard of Kuhlman Jim. Billy Tom, who was the wrestling coach back in the mid to late 20s here at Wabash, ended up at IU, and then was the Olympic wrestling coach in 1936, and they won the gold medal.
Wow.
We have three different categories. We have the Pioneer Group, which is 1860 to 1950. Okay? Think about that.
Okay.
The next one is the Contemporary Era, which is 1951 to 2000. Here are names that you're going to be more familiar with. Bill Cantrell, one of my old broadcast partners, also a really good athlete. Dr. Steve Offeld, Joe and John Ross from Northfield, Michelle Malzoni, who was the all-time leading scorer at Wabash High School on the girls' side until the last 15 years or so, Stan Leland. Robin Gratz, who was an he made the Olympic trials. He went to Manchester High School, then went to Manchester College. Tremendous athlete. Still holds a bunch of different records up there. Coach Rude. Dave Fulkerson, who played at Noble Township and at White's. Clyde Levelette, he was a coach at White's, but get this, an NBA champion, an Olympic athlete, and an NCAA champion. There's only like 2 or 3 in the world.
Wow.
Okay? And then the modern era is a smaller group because there's not as many of them so far. 2001 to the present. Kaylee Hensley, Jared Cordes, Tom Finnicle, Dan Ford, and Mike Emmerich, who's also a retired broadcaster. That is the list of who we inducted this past year. We're in the process of 2026 now. Get this. So far, the research that I've done, in the Pioneer group, we have more than 60 nominees or potential nominees. In the Contemporary group, 132. Wow. And in the Modern group, more than 30.
Wow.
So we inducted 25. We will induct 25 more, and then we'll kind of pare it down a little bit as we go. But it's a pretty cool thing, and the banquet that Teresa put together was amazing. Amazing.
So you have the banquet, and then how do you plan to recognize or honor them? Is it a space in the museum that has a wall or a list? Okay.
And
wonderful.
that kiosk is up.
That's awesome.
It'll end up being on a bigger one, but it's actually up right now. What we did was we got plaques for each of them, pretty good sized plaques, and honored them by handing those to them. And I read a bio of each of them, and some of them were able to make it, some of them weren't, some of them we couldn't even find relatives because it was, back before the turn of the century, but it was still worth it to get them in.
So.
And their pictures are on this kiosk, and they're whatever. It's very cool. And what the neatest thing was, I might get a little emotional here. When we inducted Coach Rude into the Wabash High School one years ago, I was doing the PA and I almost didn't make it through it. And I still do that. And if it's somebody I really know, it's hard. When we did this past year, Stan's was hard for me because I've known him my whole life. Coach Rude's was hard for me, but even more so, his family was there. His 3 nephews, both of his sisters, his brother and his wife, and several of their kids. And when it was over and people are starting to file out, Chris's sister, Lisa, who I've known since I was in high school, her and her husband are still standing there. And she looked at me and she said, "Bill, I just can't let go of this. It's so meaningful." There you have it. That's why I do what I do in anything. So
I was glad to hear Jared Cordes was on that list, past podcast guest from season 1, and I'm kind of hopeful that at some point we get to see Alex Downard on that list, since Manchester College University will be recognized. Maybe we'll find out more in a future episode when we do a deep dive into Alex.
Yeah,
I think you missed the part that Bill said he's continuing to pare down the amount of inductees. That list, my name, as that pares down, continues to drop farther and farther down
sounds
the
to
list.
me like Alex feels the same way about his athletic career as I did about mine. There are just a quickie here. What I did was Manchester High School has a Hall of Fame, an athletic Hall of Fame. Wabash High School has a Hall of Fame. Matt Stone started that and has done a wonderful job. The Manchester administration that followed suit did the same thing. Manchester College / University has had one since 1996. So I spend time on their websites. Manchester University's athletic director and baseball coach is a good friend, Rick Esposito. Spend some time talking back and forth to Rick. My thing is, if we're going to have a county Hall of Fame, then people that are in the existing Hall of Fames need to be nominees. And I have really worked hard on that. I haven't got all of Manchester University's in, but I have probably 75% of them.
Wow.
And there is a
Very
bunch.
good.
We haven't even talked about Steve Alford yet. Should be in the County Hall of Fame.
He's a nominee.
Okay. See, so those are the type of names we're talking about. I mean, you're going to be waiting for a long time.
Some of the nominees that you will recognize are guys like Jared, Rich Church, guys like that. Richie, I know him as Richie because he was a kid.
I like Richie. I think I'm going to go with that.
Not only was he a pretty good runner, track and field, cross-country runner, but you know what he's done in support of the programs now. And he's done a really good job. You guys all have.
And so much of that he's done quietly.
Oh, yeah. Very quietly.
Yeah.
Very quietly. So anyway, that's kind of the thing. That's where we're at there. But I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'll keep you up to date on that.
Bill, I feel fortunate to have the opportunity tonight to sit here and get to hear your story a lot of which I didn't know, and all of the information. I mean, from your time as a small business owner, baseball coach, YMCA, youth leader, public servant, all of the above. I feel like I need to say, just from the opportunity of getting to speak with you, thank you for all of the decades and decades of service pouring back into this community in the future, all of the things that will happen from the folks that you coach, the names that you rattled off, the Rain Man of sports in Wabash County. I'm not sure if that's what the business card from Teresa says, but I won't butcher that again. But that's what I'm going to refer to you as from here on out, for sure.
One more story. Jared Cordes is a good friend of yours, correct?
He is.
You know him as a runner. I know him as a baseball player. Here's the story. 1991. We're playing in the state championship.
Pause. How old are you in 1991, Alex?
-6.
Okay. So Alex is -6. I just want to make sure we all have perspective here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Everybody's age is getting brought up, but Adam somehow.
Let me put it to you this way. That was probably 75 pounds ago. For this old
A new
guy.
way to measure.
Yeah,
A new way to
for
measure.
this old fat guy. Anyway, Steve Furness, who's a good friend of mine, he and I are coaching this team. We won the state championship the year before. We are playing in the state championship in Terre Haute against Logansport, and Logansport was really good. And we're the visiting team. Top of the 7th inning, we are down 2-0. 2 guys make the first 2 outs, so we are 1 out away
From losing.
Steve looks at me and he says, "Hey, I got an idea." This is beforehand. He goes, "At some point, let's send Jared." Jared didn't start. Let's send Jared up to hit because he's quick and he can get on base. And if he does, maybe we can start something. Well, we probably waited 1 out too long. But anyway, we send Jared up to hit.
With 2 outs.
With 2 outs.
Bottom of the 7th.
Two
Top
strikes.
of the 7th.
And then 2 strikes. He's down 2 strikes. He hits a seeing eye single over the pitcher's mound, bounces into center field. We got a runner on base. And we're thinking, all right, let's see what happens. We scored 13 consecutive runs.
Incredible.
With 2 outs.
With 2 outs. 13 consecutive
Started with
runs.
Jared Cordes.
Yeah. What people don't know is Jared, and he'll never tell you, he wasn't a great baseball player, but he would have easily started on Northfield's team when he was in high school had he gone that direction. But he won't tell you that story. Erica didn't even know that story. Erica calls me or emails me about a month ago, and she says, "Hey," she goes, "I've got a bunch of bats in our garage, baseball bats. I need to get to you." And I'm like, "For what?" She's like, "Just to get them out of my garage." I said, "All right, bring them." So she did, and I told her that story, and her mouth fell open. She's like, "I didn't know that." There you have it.
All wives out there in Wabash whose
Empty your garages.
whose husbands played baseball. If you want to learn more about it, here's your.
Yeah. And empty your garage at the same time. Apparently, you'll take leftover items,
Yeah,
too.
well, I took a few of those to North Carolina with me. So,
Cool.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate this.
You know, you are beloved. Easy to see why, Bill. And you are my dear friend. And so from the bottom of my heart, I love you. Thank you for what you do and continue to do and the impact you have had and you continue to have. So thank you, my beloved friend.
I love you too, and you knew that going in. So, but yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it from all 3 of you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bill. And this podcast is only made possible through the generous support from the Lisa Gilman Investment Fund, the Sandra Kunkel Trust, Mark and Amy Ford, Paperworks Industries, the City of Wabash, the Community Foundation of Wabash County, and Visit Wabash County. Until next time, I'm Alex Downard.
I'm Adam Stakeman.
I'm Christine Floor.
And this is the ThriveIN Wabash County podcast.